Hello, my name is Vicki Molta, and this is You and Your Mental Wellness. And I want to thank you for tuning in and watching this show tonight. And I thank you for, if you've seen the show before, thank you again for tuning into it. Before I introduce the guest that I have for tonight, I just want to say one quick thing about the agency that I work at, which is called Fellowship Place. And some of you may know where that is and what it is. It's in New Haven, and it's a place that offers a lot of services to people who have mental illness. And I'm a career development peer specialist, which means that as a peer, as a person in recovery, I work with people who are working at jobs or are in school and have some stability in the length of time that they're in school and at work. And so anyway, I've been doing that for about 5 months, and I just wanted to say that Fellowship is a wonderful program, and the guest that I have on is going to talk about one of his programs. But before I mention him, I just want to tell you that we're going to have a fundraiser for Fellowship. I think it's going to be, I can't give a definite date yet, but in the next show I'll let you know what that is. But we're going to have Muriel Hemingway come on. She's, for the fundraiser, she's going to be coming to the Omni, and she's the granddaughter of Ernest Hemingway, and there was rampant mental illness run throughout her family, and she's written a book about how she wants to stay healthy and fight the mental illness that swept through her family. So it's something really exciting to have a big celebrity like her come on, and I hope you can try to come. I'll give you more details next month when I do my next show. But tonight we have a guest on, Greg Bivens, and he is a program manager for a program called CREST, which is at Fellowship Place, but it's not, I mean, you have it at the location of Fellowship Place, but it's run through this place called the Connections, right?
That's correct.
So what exactly, I'm still not sure exactly what you mean by, so the Connections oversees it, and Fellowship is just where you're located.
Yeah, that's part of it. So the CREST Center is actually a program of the Connection Incorporated. And the Connection is a nonprofit agency with different programs throughout the state of Connecticut, dealing with things for serving people living with mental illness, substance abuse, housing facilities, programs that deal with women and children. The CREST Center is one of the many programs for the Connection. And at the CREST Center, we have a collaboration with several different agencies, one of them being Fellowship Place. So with Fellowship Place, we do have space there at Fellowship Place. I have Fellowship staff that work at the CREST Center, but we also have a collaboration with Connecticut Mental Health Center in New Haven, where I have on-site clinical social workers to help serve our population. And our last collaboration is with Yale Perch, or Program for Recovery and Community Health, I believe. And with that, I have 2 peer specialists that work at the CREST Center as well.
Yeah, I want to ask you about that too, because I know that peers have a special understanding of where people who've had incarceration issues or mental health issues or substance use issues have that maybe other providers don't have. So why don't so when was CREST started, and what's the number of people they serve, and the groups? And
So we started in 2007. We are a DEMIS funded program, and the whole idea behind CREST is that there is a huge prison population in Connecticut, and a certain segment of that prison population live with mental illness and may have been arrested, incarcerated for, I will say, lower level crimes, and where prison may not be the appropriate place for them, but rather to integrate them into the community and give them structure and some sort of support. And that's where the CREST Center comes in. One of our main goals is to help to reduce recidivism or reduce individuals from going back to jail. So we are a criminal justice program, so to say, but we do have elements of Fellowship Place, which is social rehab, and we have elements of Connecticut Mental Health Center, which speaks more to the clinical angle of it all.
I think it's so important because I even just read a New York Times article a couple weeks ago about how so many prisons are like the new mental hospital, and you know you're right. You know, so many people who are just doing just misdemeanors are in you know, prisons where they shouldn't be, and I think that's great that your program is a step gets away from that and helps them focus on you know, being in the community and things like that.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, it's definitely a, you know, I think it's a sensitive topic for some people, mental illness and the criminal justice system. I guess we'd say we strive very hard to select the right people for the CREST Center. I mean, there are naturally some people who commit crimes who should be held accountable for it. But there are, you know, some individuals living with mental illness who may not have natural supports out in the community, may not have structure throughout the day, and get into trouble, for lack of a better word. And the purpose of the CREST Center and other types of alternative to incarceration programs is to help them to develop the skills and the structure and the social wherewithal to function in society, and to not reoffend.
I think you said something, I wrote down something you told me before, that you said CREST offers structure, case management, and holding clients accountable.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I think, you know, to be around their peers too, and to see that, you know, they, you know, can't get away with certain things, you know, I think it really helps them stay on the straight and narrow. And so how many clients go to it? How long can they stay? And what kind of groups do you have? And I have a lot of questions
Yeah,
about
it's
it.
no problem. So we serve a maximum at any time of 30 clients. I think probably last year we served about 80, maybe 90 clients in
Wow.
total.
Wow.
The minimum length of stay is 3 months. But after my first, you know, couple of months at the CREST Center, we realized that 3 months was not truly a significant amount of time for people to move forward in life. So I believe the average length of stay is around 189 days or 6 months. But I've had some individuals there for over 2.5 years now. And you're correct, we offer case management services. So that's assistance with housing or entitlements. We have vocational specialists that can help with any type of pre-voc work or job developing or educational opportunities. We have on-site clinicians that help to serve as that liaison between the individual's main clinician and the program there. Throughout the day, structure is a huge piece. The majority of the time spent at CREST for individuals going there is going to be in groups. And we have a variety of groups that psychoeducational and pro-social in nature. So we have a Demas-supported group called Start Now, which I like to call sort of cognitive behavioral therapy's greatest hits. And they use functional analysis, or basically looking at, you know, triggers, behaviors, and consequences to teach individuals, as well as other skills in that curriculum. We have Bingo, which is a fun group. Some of my peer mentors, they run 2 groups there. One of them being a group called DTR, or Double Trouble in Recovery. And it's essentially, it's essentially a 12-step group for people living with mental illness.
And substance use.
And substance use, sorry, I think that the premise behind that one is that I'll say some meetings in the communities may not be as open to mental illness, and so DTR is a way where people living with a mental illness can feel comfortable talking about dealing with their symptoms and dealing with relapsing or different types of drugs.
Is it a 12-step group, or is it something similar to it?
It's 12-step. They have
Okay.
the same principles, I guess you would say. There's it's set up pretty much the same way. It's all self-sustaining. There are no staff that run that, so only people with lived experience. So it's a closed meeting in that sense. probably another one of the interesting groups that we have. We have music therapy, a relapse prevention group, and we also have a group that I coined CTP, or Criminal Thinking Pattern. And that group looks at the cognitive distortions that can lead people to make bad decisions. So not to say that, the individuals that we serve, want to be criminals, but more that sometimes people living with mental illness, or without a diagnosis, sometimes we make choices, or we view the world in a certain way that can lead to bad behavior or maladaptive behavior.
Do you think it's because of hopelessness, maybe, or just kind of lack of hope? That they can get ahead, or
I think that's definitely part of it. That's why I think that's one of the benefits of having a peer mentor there, because these are people who have been there, done that, lived with mental illness, been on drugs or alcohol and have recovered, been in and out of jail, been in and out of psych hospitals, and turned their lives around. So I think probably one of the most important roles that the peers play is that inspiration, that hope, knowing that if I can do it, you can do it as well.
Right.
But I mean, there's still other factors that I think, contributed to somebody going back to the criminal justice system.
Right. Yeah, I think peer mentors are amazing. I know a couple of the people that are in your program, and they're just they offer they're like role models,
Yes.
and it is, people need that. People need to believe that people can get better and they can change and they can recover. And if they don't see people recovering or getting better, it's hard for them to accept or think that maybe they'll think that things are always going to be the same, and I'm never going to get out of this cycle. And
Absolutely. I think that there's a benefit to having peers there from a client perspective and from a staff perspective. I think anyone who works in the human service field can get burnt out, sometimes, because it can be difficult. Change is sometimes a long process. So I'll speak to myself personally, but having peer mentors there, at least for me, lets me know that, this does work.
Right.
People can change, as well as the client seeing that people can change. I think another benefit of the peers is that they're often connected in the community in a way that staff aren't. They know where all the bad neighborhoods are. They often hear things that are happening in the clients' lives before we do, because there's a certain level of mutual respect or trust that they have. And sometimes, an individual in our program will tell a peer mentor something that they won't tell us, because they feel that the peer mentor just understands.
Right.
And at the end of the day, as long as they're being able to express themselves and kind of move on from whatever pain or issue that they're dealing with, it's a benefit.
Right. So I'm thinking, I think that's really important to have that, and so I was going to ask you something and now I can't remember, but there's the Sierra program, and I want to know about connections too. I think you mentioned that too, but how they all fit in to try to figure out, because we had a guest a couple months ago that was in the Sierra program, and how is that connected to CREST? And
Yep. So one program from the connection is called Sierra Pretrial Re-Interview Center. There's actually two Sierras, but I think what you're talking about is called Sierra Pretrial. And Sierra Pretrial is transitional housing for people living with mental illness coming directly out of jail most of the time. So what will happen is the court liaison that works at Sierra Pretrial will go to XYZ prison, interview a potential candidate for the Sierra Pretrial Re-Interview Center, make sure that this individual is, lives with a mental illness, that their crime isn't too egregious to be let out into the community, and they get, discharged from prison and go into the Sierra Pretrial Re-Interview Center for generally 3 to 6 months. And while they're at the Sierra Pretrial Re-Interview Center, they connect them with different services, whether it be substance abuse services, and one of the services being the CREST Center, a lot more for the case management, for psychosocial support. and for general case management services. So about a third of the individuals that I serve at Crest actually live at Sierra Pretrial for a short period of time. If that individual is from New Haven, so say for example, client John, gets arrested for a breach of peace. He's living with schizophrenia. He goes to Sierra Pretrial Reinterview Center, engages there, maybe does some outside treatment, some outside substance abuse education, comes to the CREST program throughout the day because we're just day reporting. And there they get a lot of socialization, a lot of skill building, and a lot of psychoeducational groups. Once that individual discharges from Sierra Pretrial, he can still stay with the CREST Center. So it's not like someone just leaving a residential program, going back out into the community and having no support. That person is able to go live back wherever they were from, come to the CREST Center throughout the day and keep that support going and help to reach those goals, whether it be, educational, vocational, medication management, just dealing with life in general.
Right. Now I wanted to ask you something else too. I wanted to ask you about like what motivates you to do this type of work. I'm just thinking, you said that you like to see people grow and change, and you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. And
Yeah.
you look for the aha moments.
I do. I do. I think that the aha moments of that epiphany where somebody, finally gets it, finally gets that, hey, I don't have to go to jail anymore, or hey, I don't have to go to a psych hospital, or hey, you know what? I live with a mental illness, but that doesn't mean that I can't have a family, that I can't have a job, that I can't be a productive member of society. So at least, in my personal experience, I love to see people grow. That's both staff, and clients.
Right.
Make positive changes in their life. It feeds my soul, so to
Right.
say. Yeah.
So you've never really had a problem with burnout, or like,
Oh.
they say don't work harder than the client. And I found, like right now, I'm working with a client who is really struggling, and I feel like I'm working really hard to try to help him, but I don't want to get burned out because we have to take care of ourselves in
do.
this field too.
Yeah,
And
you do.
so you're able to kind of keep your boundaries. And
I try. I try. I mean, I think that you have to have some sort of emotional connection, some sort of passion to want to work with people, and that's in any type of human service field. But you're absolutely right. And that phrase that you said, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. I try to always keep that in perspective, and realize that we all have choices. And that sometimes at the end of the day, the best thing that I can do is to educate a person or to lay out the options for them. And the person may not change tomorrow or the next day, but perhaps, that seed is planted. And, the changes will take place another time. I mean, anecdotally, I've had, many clients come to the CREST Center and, maybe graduate from CREST, not do well. But then kind of get it back together 2 years later and then call me and like,
Right.
hey, look, I get it, I get it. And,
Right.
that feeds the soul. But I think a healthy perspective, and being able to just kind of leave your job at your job is
Right.
very important, yeah.
And that makes me think about what I want to go into next with you about the stages of change, because I think that's really important for people to know about what the stages of change are, that people do relapse, some people relapse and, have to go back. But why don't you describe like the different sections, like
See if I can remember them all.
pre-contemplation?
Yeah. So the whole premise behind the stages of change is that part of it is you don't want to do more work than the individual wants to do for themselves. And I think in an ideal world, if you had, somebody come in who was looking for a job and was gung-ho and ready for it, that would make your job easier. Maybe you wouldn't even need a job. But the stages of change relate to any type of behavior that we want. And as healthcare professionals, it helps us to figure out where to work. So the first stage is called pre-contemplation or pre-thinking stage. Let's use an example of someone who has a nicotine addiction or smokes cigarettes. A person in this stage, in a pre-thinking or pre-contemplation stage, doesn't think about any consequences of smoking cigarettes, doesn't think that they have a problem. This is no issue. Cool, I smoke cigarettes, and that is what it is. So if you're trying to work with somebody and trying to have them stop smoking cigarettes and they don't think that they have a problem, you're running into a brick wall.
Right, right.
Right.
So what you're saying before you move on
Mm-hmm.
is that you really have to meet the person where they're at.
Very well said. Yes.
You can't say, oh yes, you do have a problem and I'm going to fix it for
Right,
you, or
right,
you know,
right.
'cause they're at a different stage of thinking.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Very well said. Yeah. The next stage would be contemplation, where, I'm thinking about changing my behavior. People are talking to me about cigarettes and some of the dangers and things like that. So at least now I'm thinking about it and acknowledging that there is a problem, that there could be a problem. After that would be the preparation stage, where it's more of accepting, like, yes, this is a problem. Yes, I know I need to change. Maybe I don't know how to change. Maybe I don't have enough support to change, but I'm prepared. Next step after that one would be called the action stage, where I know that I have a problem. I want to change. These are the changes that I'm going to make, and the person actively takes steps to make those changes. So if someone's smoking cigarettes, it could be, starting to cut down, getting on nicotine gum or the nicotine patch, something like that. After that action stage would be the maintenance stage, where the person has been able to maintain that new behavior for, I want to say, for a period of 6 months. So cigarette free for 6 months, drug free, whatever it might be, for 6 months. And that's where we want to, see people. Some individuals say that there's a stage afterwards called the lapse stage or the relapse stage. Some people feel that relapsing is a part of recovery. I don't really have an opinion either way, but that's simply where a person has been able to maintain that new behavior for X amount of months, but then slips up maybe 1 or 2 times, but then is able to kind of get back on the wagon, so to
Right.
say.
I found that I just finished an article that my supervisor wanted me to read called Harm Reduction. Have you ever heard of that?
Yes, yes.
And I'd like to know how you feel about that, because that's totally opposite from, like, for example, my husband isn't in recovery from substance use. And he's very, very rigid in his, he goes to 3 AA meetings a week, and he does not want to relapse. He has 20 years of sobriety, and, that works for him, but that may not work for everybody. Harm reduction, you want to say something about that?
Yeah, so my understanding of harm reduction is just that. It's to help reduce the harm that whatever behavior that the person is exhibiting can cause. Some individuals may look at harm reduction as a step to total abstinence. I think my experience with harm reduction has generally been around people living with HIV and around intravenous drug use. I mean, it's the perspective that, okay, so-and-so is going to use. They're not ready, maybe they're in the pre-contemplation or maybe even the contemplation stage. They're not ready to stop whatever behavior it is, to stop using. But how can we reduce the harm? If someone is living with HIV, for example, and they wish to still participate in, adult activities, sexual activities, how can we reduce the harm that would cause to somebody else? That's where condoms come into play. If someone is an intravenous drug user and they're really not ready to stop shooting whatever drug that they might be, okay, well, let's figure out how to obtain new needles, or let's figure out how to clean needles, so at least we can reduce the harm of spreading HIV, of other types of diseases, or even forming abscesses or something on the individual. So it's really a step down to reduce harm, but not really
Right.
always stop the behavior.
Right. And for some people, that's more realistic for them, because otherwise, maybe if you say you've got to quit this, 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 and this, and
It's overwhelming.
yeah.
I think you're right. I don't want to take too much of your time, but I went to Canada. This had to be, oh man, probably about 8 years ago, Vancouver. Vancouver, and they actually have I forget what it was called, but it's basically a place where intravenous drug users can go and safely use. They had on-site nurses, brand new needles for them to use, doctors, nurses in case someone accidentally overdosed on drugs. And that was their model of harm reduction. I don't think it's perfect for everybody, but they took that standpoint. It's going to happen anyway. People aren't ready. It's too overwhelming to stop everything. Let's at least reduce the crime, reduce the spread of different types of diseases, and hopefully when they're ready, they'll make those changes.
Right, right. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Now, I just have a couple other questions. I don't think we have too much time yet, but I wanted to know, you mentioned to me about the 10 spiritual qualities, and if you want to say something about that, because you said that it's like one-on-one counseling that you...
That was actually something, what you're referring to is a program called Spiritual Self Schema, or 3S, 3-S. That was something that I was a part of when I worked for Yale. This was 2005 or so, but it's basically a curriculum that is geared to serving people living with HIV or AIDS and dealing with a substance abuse. And what it does is it taps into the individual's own spirituality, religion, higher power, whatever you want to call it, as a source of motivation to help stop bad behavior. So this curriculum was really designed for any religion, people who don't believe in a higher power. And it was 10 sessions based on spiritual qualities that you were talking about. One session would be on generosity. How do you freely give to other people? How do you give to yourself? Things that are helpful, things that are healthy. Another quality or characteristic was called renunciation. So it was a whole session around giving up things that are harmful to you, harmful to ourselves.
I'd love to,
Yeah.
we only have about a minute left, but I'd love to have you on again and cover that in more
Fair enough.
detail, because I think that's really important to hear, for people to hear about this type of thing. Spirituality is very, very important, and there were other things I wanted to ask you too, and the time just came up, but I wanted to thank you very much for coming to the
Thank you.
show,
I
Greg.
appreciate it.
And I wanted to thank Josh Kelly for doing the camera work. I want to thank the audience for watching. I want to thank Madison Cable Access Group and Katrina Skiana for the website, and Antoinette Jalbert for mailings. And so we're just going to be ending here, and thank you again for tuning in, and we'll see you next month.